Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. How are y'all doing today? So here today on Abby the Witch, we are going to be talking about unpopular opinions about witches, witchcraft, and pagans. This is not my original idea. This was originally a series created by Hearth Witch here on YouTube. A lot of other witches have kind of added their unpopular opinions to the cauldron, if you will. So it's not really a tag, but other witches have just wanted to put in their 2 cents. And I am one of those witches. I really want to add some unpopular opinions. Some of these opinions I've just heard. Some of these opinions are my opinions, and some of these opinions are opinions that other people have explicitly told me for this video I'm going to do. First unpopular opinion is not all people were witches who were burned in the 17th century. Okay, so this is a very polarizing idea, and it's not really an opinion because it's more historical fact that not all of the people who were persecuted and burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials were witches, obviously. But I think what people really get into and wonder is if anyone was a witch back then. And I have to say that, yes, I do believe that there were witches back then. Obviously, guys, I mean, let's think about it. Witchcraft is ancient. Witchcraft is ancient, okay? And when I say witchcraft and when I say witches, I don't mean just not Christian, okay? Because here's the thing too, a lot of these people who were accused of being witches were people who were brought over to the New World against their will, aka slaves. Okay, so a lot of those people weren't Christian and practiced different beliefs, practiced different traditions, and were accused of being a witch because of that. That is definitely a form of racism, and that's not what I'm referring to. Whether those people call themselves witches or not, they were innocent. And the only reason they got burned at the stake or accused of being a witch was because they weren't practicing the same religion as the Puritans. But were there witches who came over to the New World who practiced what we call now traditional witchcraft, traditional British witchcraft? Yeah, why wouldn't there be? Again, it's just so old. I just feel like, why couldn't there have been? And, you know, religion and witchcraft and paganism and, you know, all these things kind of get like muddy together. So why couldn't there have been someone who believed in God and also did witchcraft? You know, that's, I'm sure that was a thing too. So were all the Puritans who came over, were all the Christians who came over not witches? No, I think there had to have been some witches because the British witchcraft got brought over here. Why wouldn't there be witches back then? Why wouldn't there be? Now, it was Christianity and like this fear of the devil, and was that extremely prominent during this time in America, in the New World? Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't have been people practicing witchcraft. You know, now, did they call themselves a witch? I don't know. And that's the thing too, none of us were there. You know, none of us were there. So do I think that there were people back then who practiced witchcraft and even called it witchcraft, or called themselves a pagan, or called themselves whatever? No, maybe what they thought they were doing was just what their mom or grandma did. Like they, you know, it's not like they necessarily knew or called themselves a witch, but we would look at it now maybe and call it witchcraft and them being a witch, right? Now, back then, it was pretty easy to be accused of being a witch. I mean, you could have a mark on your body and be called a witch. You could have a book on astrology and be called a witch. So it really didn't take much. Were these people who had these things actually witches? No, I don't think they were. But You never know. Like I said, none of us were there. So I really think that there are probably some hidden witches in there somewhere. There had to have been. There had to have been. The second unpopular opinion I want to talk about is you have to have a high priest or priestess and more than 2 people to have a coven. I disagree. I really disagree. I think that forming a coven is all about your intention. It doesn't matter how many people you have. It doesn't matter if it's online. It doesn't matter if it's in person. It doesn't matter if it's just between you and one other person. Now, traditionally speaking, do you have to have, I think it's more than 2 people or more than 3 people to have a coven? Yes. But if you're like an eclectic witch, or you're not following traditional witchcraft, or whatever you want to call yourself, or you're like me and you do traditional witchcraft and you just don't give a fuck what people think, then you can do whatever you want. Witchcraft is all about your intention. Forming a coven, in my opinion, is all about your intention. So if you do like a ritual or a ceremony to form a coven with one other person, then you're in a coven. It's your coven. Now, the high priest, high priestess thing, nowadays that's kind of turned into more of a Wiccan thing. At least that's who I've always been told by. Was always Wiccan, saying like, oh, that's not a coven because you don't have a high priest or high priestess. They were always Wiccan people. So, and I, doing research and things like that, it seems like it's become a Wiccan thing that you have to have a high priest or priestess in a coven. Does that mean that a coven who has one is automatically a Wiccan coven? No. Does that mean that Wiccans invented high priest and priestesses? Absolutely not. But it has become a typical thing for Wiccans to do. That being said, not everyone is Wiccan, right? So if you don't feel like you need a high priest or priestess, and you don't feel like you want to have more than 2 people in your coven, then it doesn't matter. It's okay. You can still have a coven. That's my opinion. The third unpopular opinion I would like to talk about is you have to commit to a deity and or god or goddess to work with them. I disagree. I've talked about this before. I've talked about this a lot recently, actually, because it just I don't know. I just really disagree with it. Everyone's relationship with deity, spirits, your spirit guides, whatever, is different, okay? I truly believe that deity, the divine, know what you need, and they know you. And if that means not needing to dedicate yourself to one god and blindly follow them, then that's, what they're going to offer you. They're not going to, I just don't think that deities need that from everyone. Now, if you're someone who feels like your deity needs that from you, and you need that commitment, and you want to do a whole ceremony ritual dedicating yourself to a certain pantheon or one god or goddess, go for it. This has been the case for me, that I feel like I don't have to dedicate myself or commit myself to one god or even one pantheon. The only time I've ever felt pressure or the need to fully commit myself and dedicate myself to one god is when I was a child and I was Christian. And as I got older, I realized, and again, I'm not trying to offend anyone, because this could just be for you and not for other people. But in my eyes, that was conceited of that God. That was conceited, that was narcissistic, to demand that I follow them blindly, that I put faith into them blindly, that I commit myself and fully dedicate myself, and there's no turning back. And if I do turn my back on them, then it's betrayal. And I'm not into that. I'm not into that. That's part of the reason why I left Christianity. I'm never doing that again. I'm never doing that again. Whether you work with Lucifer, whether you work with the Greek pantheon, or you work with Thor from the Norse pantheon, it's up to you. It's up to you. And that, again, is completely depends on your relationship with that deity. In my opinion, if you're feeling pressure to fully commit to and only work with one pantheon or one god or goddess, don't feel that pressure. If you're feeling pressure to do that, then it's probably not what you need. Okay? Now again, if that feels natural to you and the right thing to do, go for it. But, you know, I feel like that pressure that some of us feel comes from Christianity. I really do. Whether you're Christian or not, I feel like this country, well, in America, obviously not all of us are from America, but even in Western countries, Christianity is extremely prevalent, right? It's kind of dominating. So it's easy for us to, again, whether we're Christian or not, to get hung up on that kind of scaffolded mentality of feeling like you have to dedicate yourself to one God. So if you're someone who feels pressure to do that, I would encourage you to try to break that mentality, to try to strip yourself. It's very liberating. Okay, the fourth unpopular opinion that I would like to talk about is every pagan witch is basically Wiccan, or is doing things in their practice that is Wiccan. This drives me insane. I disagree, strongly disagree. A little bit of background on Wicca so that I can better explain why I disagree so strongly. Wicca is a fertility, nature-based religion that utilizes witchcraft. Wicca was established in the 1950s by Gerald Gardner. Wicca is not a series of original concepts that Wicca invented. Wicca is based on ancient pagan beliefs, traditions, and celebrations. Okay? Hey guys, so I know that little snippet that I popped up while I was talking said that it's also based on 20th century Hermetic motives, but even that is based on ancient pagan beliefs. So if you look into that, that's actually the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is a secret society that, you know, studied occultism and things like that. But it's based on Hermes, which is an ancient Greek god. So yeah, it's still based on ancient beliefs. I just wanted to point that out. Even the witchcraft within Wicca is not original, meaning Wicca did not invent witchcraft. It's based on a traditional witchcraft. Things like casting magical circles, casting circles, calling on the elements and the directions, celebrating the different times of the year. Wicca did not invent these things, okay? These have been around for a long fucking time. Wicca simply borrowed these concepts and put it into their religion. Now, this is nothing against Wicca or every Wiccan, okay? It bothers me when people, Wiccan or not, it bothers me when people say, oh, well, you're doing a Wiccan thing. You don't call yourself Wiccan? Like that, it bugs me, okay? So this is like against people who say that, right? That gatekeepy attitude. It has nothing to do with me attacking Wicca in general. If you're someone who follows Wicca and you're a Wiccan and that works for you and you leave other people alone, great, beautiful, wonderful, okay? I guess it just irritates me because some old white guy in the 1950s established this religion that was borrowed from ancient pagan beliefs, and he tends to get the credit for all of this. He's just not owed that credit, in my opinion. He's just not at all. Now, did he make this religion that borrowed from different pagan ideas and different witchcraft ideas and put it all together into the religion that is Wicca? Yeah, of course. But these individual things that he's borrowed were just that. They have been borrowed, okay? They're not created by him. They're not invented by him. So when people say, oh, you're just a Wiccan, you're doing these Wiccan things, why don't you call yourself a Wiccan? I say, no, I'm not Wiccan, and no, I'm not doing Wiccan things. I'm doing things that my ancient pagan ancestors did, and or witches did hundreds if not thousands of years ago. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people already know these things. I have been really surprised by the amount of people, including people who call themselves Wiccan, who have been unaware of the fact that Wicca is not some ancient religion, that Wicca wasn't the original creator of all these ideas and concepts and traditions and celebrations. And when I tell them that it was invented by Gerald Gardner in the 1950s, there have been people, including Wiccans, even some Wiccans, who are like, what? And they like didn't believe me. I'm like, yes, I just feel like part of it is because Wicca has been so popular since like the 80s and 90s. It's been so popular. And again, it was established by some old white guy. So it just like blew up and covered everything else up. And I don't blame people who don't understand this, what I'm trying to explain here about Wicca. I don't blame people or judge them, because a lot of the research you look up implies that Wicca is the original creator of all these things. So it's easy to believe that. I get it. So no judgment. It just drives me crazy when people tell me that I'm Wiccan. I'm not a Wiccan. Again, nothing wrong with being a Wiccan, but I'm not a Wiccan just because I do these things. Even the concept of having like a sacred knife or sword, like that's ancient. That is ancient. So the last unpopular opinion I would like to talk about today is actually from one of you all, from a subscriber. And it is, you do not have to cleanse a crystal after you buy it. And I actually agree with this, because personally, sometimes I do cleanse it and sometimes I don't. I base this on my intuition. If I feel like that certain crystal is kind of bogged down with excess energy that it doesn't need, then I'll give it a good cleansing. But sometimes I feel like it's just filled with its magical properties and that's it. And there's no like excess energy I need to get rid of or anything like that. Again, it's just based on my intuition and how I feel and how it feels to me. And yeah, so I agree with that. All right, guys, that is all I have left for today. Any unpopular opinions you have about the witchy community or the pagan community, let me know down below. I would love to do a part 2 to this and just react to your guys' unpopular opinions if you have any. And that is all I have for today, guys. So until next time, I hope you stay very well. And don't forget to follow the snake. Love you. Thank you. Bye. Here today on Abby the Witch, we are going to be talking about unpopular opinions. Oh dear. Talk about today is actually from one of you all, a subscriber. Witchcraft, traditional British witchcraft. Ugh. Okay, the third unpopular, yes, this is the third.